Hello, friends, and welcome to Escaping the Mouse with your host, me, Breck Roll. All right, I've been in Texas now for 24 hours, and I'm already going home. Well, just kidding. Well, sort of. I am going back to Los Angeles now today because I have to go pick up the cats, make all the final arrangements for moving out of the house, get the keys to the realtor, do all that closing stuff. So then I'll come back here and start a new life. I have about 2 hours until my plane arrives, and just kind of kicking back waiting. Turns out Jordan's flying back to LA today too. He's got a little bit of a later flight than I do, so we just kind of rode together to the airport. All right, so I kind of vowed to myself that when I started this that I was going to try and keep it as upbeat as possible and try and avoid the whining and criticism, just because that's kind of the nature of where this was going to go. I was kind of bitter about what's happened at Disneyland, that they never gave me the chance to do that. But I just figured that nobody was going to want to sit and listen to someone whine all the time about how bad things were. And so I kind of vowed I was going to try and keep this upbeat as much as possible. But unfortunately, the events of the past couple of days have just been so overwhelmingly bad that I just really had to document it here, just because it seems unbelievable now looking back on it and seeing how bad, how many things went wrong and all that. So I apologize if this comes off as a little negative, but anyway, here we go. So as most of you know, Jordan and I arrived in Waco on Thursday afternoon. I spent the night here. Jordan found a hotel because really I had nothing here. I had, no furniture, just basically what we brought with us in the car. I also knew on Friday that I was going to fly back home to California just to deal with the cats, close out the house, get everything finalized. So I arrived in California about 4 or 4:30 in the afternoon on Friday. Got to my parents' house about 6 o'clock and made the decision at that point that I immediately wanted to go over to my house just to check out the cats, make sure everything was cool. They were fine, I figured they would be, they usually do pretty well on their own, and I think they actually kind of appreciate having a little break from people from time to time. So they were just fine. They had plenty of food, they had plenty of water, they were happy. So I spent a little time with them and then went back to my parents' house and spent the night. On Saturday morning, I got up immediately and I wanted to go over and basically finish everything up in the house. Get the cats all ready to move, get every last thing moved out of the house, and really vacate the house once and for all so that the new owners will be ready to move in. So I got there about probably 10 o'clock on Saturday morning. About the only thing I had still running in the house was internet. So I brought over my laptop and my cell phone with plans of working out how to ship the cats. So once I got there, I immediately called the shipping place and to make arrangements for them. I knew it was going to be very, very pricey because I talked to them a few weeks earlier, and at the time I discussed with them the idea that my cats had always lived together. They'd spent their whole lives together. When I took them to get spayed and neutered, they were kenneled together. When a few weeks ago when we went on a trip, I also had them boarded together just because, they've been together their whole life and they're far more calm, especially in strange situations, if they have each other. So when I talked to the shipping place several weeks ago, I discussed that with them, and there were no problems with me buying one large cat carrier, the one you saw in a couple of the vlogs, where they could both be in there together and they could both be shipped together. Well, when I called into the shipping company on Saturday, I was told, nope, sorry, you can't do that. Each of the cats has to be in their own carrier. So that was kind of a pain in the neck, because now not only was I going to have to deal with the fact that the cats were going to be more stressed out on their trip because they weren't going to be able to be together. Now I was also going to have to go buy another cat carrier and spend another $100 or so bucks. At this point, I've spent $300 on cat carriers, and it's just, if the shipping company could have gotten their act together and had everyone on the same page with this would have been a lot easier. But that wasn't the way it was, and unfortunately they weren't willing to bend in any way, shape, or form. I had to get 2 cat carriers, and that was the end of it. So anyway, I made the decision that okay, I was going to have to get 2 cat carriers. I made the reservation. The reservation was for a flight at about 5:30 on Saturday evening. I had to cap the cats at the shipping place 2 hours early, so about 3:30. Well, it's about 11 o'clock now, so I got a little bit of wiggle room in there. So I went out and bought a couple of new cat carriers for them, got them home, assembled them. In the process of assembling one of them, I discovered that it was broken. So I had to spend some time going back to the pet place to get the replacement. Got it home, got it assembled, and got the cats into it, and basically was all ready. So I moved the cats into the car and basically cleaned up everything else that was in the house. And basically that consisted of everything associated with the cable and the internet. You know, I had modems and cable boxes and remote controls and cables and all that stuff that goes along with that. So I packed all that stuff into the car. I had a few cleaning supplies left over, a vacuum cleaner, a couple of brooms, you know the kind of stuff we're talking about. Got that all packed into the car and drove over to where the cable place was. Oh, it turns out the cable place had moved. And so now all of a sudden I'm on a scavenger hunt to find Spectrum. Turns out they were at a new location a couple miles away, which just burned up a little bit more time for me. So got everything returned to the cable company. Turns out I had a little bit of a credit, so I didn't owe anything. That was nice. I then got in the car, drove back to my parents' house, and immediately called an Uber to go to the airport. At this point, it's like 1:30 or 2 o'clock, and the deadline's 3:30, so I knew it was about an hour to drive to LAX from my parents' house, so I wanted to get away as quickly as possible. So I got an Uber, got a ride over to the shipping place first, and when I got over to the shipping place, I had another bombshell dropped on my lap. It turns out it isn't enough just to have your cats vaccinated. You also have to have a document signed by a vet indicating that the cats are healthy enough to travel. So I started looking around. It's Saturday afternoon, and I don't know if it's this way everywhere, but a lot of vets kind of do half days on Saturdays, so they're usually gone by 2 or 3. So at about 3 o'clock, it's, we're looking for a vet. The people at the shipping place were doing their best to accommodate me. They looked around, they kept calling vet after vet after vet, seeing if they had somebody in. After 5 or 6 calls, they managed to find somebody that would do the check. It was just a couple of miles away. At that point, since it looked like I was going to miss the flight that day because I had to have them checked in by 3:30. It's 3 o'clock. I got to go over to the vet. There's not enough time to get over to the vet, get them checked out, and get them back by 3:30. So the guys at the shipping company also told me about another company that does cat boarding that's very close to the shipping place, and apparently they've got a good relationship with this shipping company to the point where you can board your animals overnight there, and they will bring them over to the shipping company in the morning to ship. So, okay, it's a lot more money, but you know what? It allowed me to not risk missing my flight, because at this point, if I can't find a place to deal with the cats and I can't get the cats to the shipping company to be shipped, then I have to take them home and I end up missing my flight and sacrificing all the money that I spent on that flight and all that stuff. So the boarding house was, kind of a last-ditch effort to kind of save what was left of the trip. So after I got the cats checked out by the vet and approved for flying, I had to go back to the shipping company, get all the paperwork filled out, and then I went over to this boarding company, checked the cats in. They were going to spend the night there, and then first thing in the morning, the boarding company would bring them to the shipping company, and we'd be good to go. So everything seemed to be on track and going well. Got the cats over and boarded, and it was fine. I got out in front and was calling an Uber to get to the airport, and when I called up the Uber app, I was informed that the last payment, the Uber that I'd taken to get from the shipping company over to the boarding company, the payment had been declined. And there was an option to try again. I tried again. They kept saying, no, sorry, it won't go through. So I immediately looked in the account, figured out, okay, I've got plenty of money in there to cover this. Shouldn't be a problem. Probably what's going on is that the bank has seen a bunch of weird expenses in the past week or week and a half. You know, I've been in California, I've been in Arizona, I've been in New Mexico, I've been in Texas, and now I'm back in California again. They probably looked at that as suspicious and they shut down my account. Well, it turns out that is what had happened. So I called them, spent about 20 minutes on the phone listening to a recording endlessly tell me over and over again how important my call was, and finally got on with the operator who was able to correct the problem. At that point I got an Uber, rode over to the airport, got myself checked in, and everything seemed to be going fine. I flew out of LA about 8:30, arrived in Texas about 1:30 in the morning, and then spent 2 hours driving to Waco and spent the night here. So I get up the next morning on Sunday morning, and I get a call immediately from the boarding house. They had attempted to bring the cats over to the shipping place, but the shipping place has a regulation that says they cannot accept live animals if the outside temperature is above 80 degrees Fahrenheit or below 20 degrees Fahrenheit, and the temperature at that time was scheduled to be 82 degrees. So I was told, okay, you know, I'm not going to be able to ship the cats today. Everything is going to be delayed another day. And they're going to hopefully ship them Monday afternoon, and at which point they'd get here about 11:30 or so. I pick them up at 12:30, be back home by 2:30. So that ended up happening. We ended up getting everything rescheduled. I really got to give credit to the boarding company. They've been like the one ray of light in this whole thing. They've gone out of their way to help me get through all this. They knew I was out of town and all that. So I got to really give them kudos. They've been a great company. They've been like the one bright spot in this whole thing. So shortly after I get the cat situation dealt with, I start asking myself, okay, when am I going to start being able to get furniture here? I had given a call a week ago on Sunday to the moving company, to Pods, to have them transfer all 3 of my shipping containers out here to Texas so that I could, be ready to move my personal stuff into my apartment and be ready to go. Well, I looked online, and everything I could see online indicated that nothing had happened, that the pods were still in California. So this is a week later. I'm expecting, the stuff to arrive in 2 or 3 days, but since it takes 9 days to ship it out here, and they hadn't started yet, we have to start all over on the shipping again. So I ended up calling them, making arrangements. I first started talking to them online, going through the chat service, and the person I was talking to was just absolutely unsympathetic. They acknowledged that they knew that I had called and made the arrangement, and that the person who had talked to me had forgotten to save the work, and that was why nothing happened. But despite the fact that this is entirely their fault, they took zero responsibility for it. They weren't willing to expedite my order to get it out here quickly. They weren't willing to give me any kind of a discount because they totally screwed me over. And now I'm just stuck with the fact that it's going to be another 9 days. And on top of that, they told me they weren't going to be able to ship until this coming Thursday. Well, that's ridiculous. I can understand it's Sunday. I can understand that they won't ship on Sunday, and Monday is Memorial Day, but there's no reason that they couldn't have shipped on Tuesday or Wednesday. So I basically just discontinued the chat with the operator at that point and decided to call, because sometimes you talk to somebody, they hear the anger in your voice, and maybe they're a little bit more receptive to trying to fix the problems that they caused. So after getting on the phone with a Pods operator and explaining the situation, she was very, very understanding and apologizing left and right, but once again not willing to do a whole lot to correct the problem except just we'll start it now. Fortunately, she was able to start the process and have everything shipped on Tuesday rather than Thursday, which hopefully means I'm going to have that all 3 of the pods will arrive in Texas on the 31st, and I can have one of them here on the next day on the 1st. So that's where we are on that right now. Like I said, it's just been one disaster after another, and like I said, I apologize for making it sound like I'm whining, but it's just so unbelievable, all the things that went wrong all at once. And so I just kind of had to vent. Oh, one more thing. I spent 55 years on this planet and never once had a California state flag. But on my first day in Texas, I found this thing. And you know what? I think I identify more with Texas now than I ever did with California. Anyway, that's all I have for now. Once again, thank you for watching Escaping the Mouse, and I will see you next time. Good night.